I love that our patron is in today's gospel. And I love that the scene that gets painted for us describes his calling, also that he and St. Peter, they were called together, right, or very close to one another. And then we have these two other brothers calling, James and John. And all of that, reflecting on that, kind of reminded me of an interaction that I had when I was visiting my own brother and my sister-in-law and my two little nieces in Nashville for Thanksgiving. So I learned while I was there that my brother and his family, they live about 15 minutes from the Nashville Dominicans, the mother house up there in Nashville. So this is a convent with a thriving community of religious sisters. For those who don't know, it's about 200 nuns. And I learned while I was there that for holidays, most of them come back to the mother house. Outside of holidays, they kind of go and do their work in different places. 3 of them are in St. Catherine of Siena teaching at the school there in Metairie. So I was very excited to go visit their convent, and I didn't call ahead, but I just kind of showed up. And as I was pulling into the property they have there were 2 nuns walking around the little road around their community, and I rolled down the window. I had my collar on, so they stopped their conversation. They welcomed me, and then decided they had enough time before their next time of prayer to give me a little tour. So during that tour, one of the nuns, she said something that kind of made me think that it seemed like they were open to me celebrating Mass for them. This convent, right, with 200 nuns in it, which to me that was surprising, because in my mind, I thought something like I would have thought there might be like a wait list to come celebrate Mass here, right? That y'all get the best priest all the time. And so that when this particular sister, she seemed to open this door to this possibility of celebrating Mass for them, I figuratively, right, stepped right through it, and I said, like, am I hearing you correctly? Like, the way you're talking it sounds like I could celebrate Mass like, while I'm here, like while I'm here visiting my family. And she was like, yeah. I was like, okay. She said, would you want to do that? I answered, right, if possible, of course. So in the back of my mind, there's a correct way to do these sort of things. There's a letter that you're supposed to submit to communities when you go try to do ministry in other dioceses throughout the country, all this safe environment stuff. So I'm thinking about that in my mind. But putting that to the side, I clarified. I was like, do you mean that like I could be the main celebrant for one of y'all's Masses? Like I could preach to y'all? Or are you saying like I'd be the con-celebrant and there'd be another priest, right, on this wait list that I imagined in my mind that he would be the main celebrant? She answered, we could do either. Right? And she said, I'm surprised that you would want to preach to us. It's like a lot of priests are intimidated. And I was like, okay, I get where that's coming from. I get where that's coming from. But I shared with her that for whatever reason, there was a similar sort of scenario that was present when I was in the seminary. So one of the many things that got talked about often in the seminary was this fear that a lot of guys had after they got ordained deacons and they were able to preach, and they would have to come back and preach to the seminarians, because seminarians can be very opinionated. And they're not afraid to share their opinions with you, like, you know, how your homily was. And I shared with this particular nun, like having these conversations, having kind of years to prepare for that moment. For whatever reason, really my initial response when I was hearing that fear being talked about was something like, you know, why would I be afraid? Like, don't they need Jesus just as much as I did? So I would approach these nuns, preaching to these nuns in the same way. Like, we're all in this together, right? We're all pursuing the same person. And there's another thing I'll just add. This is a personal conviction of mine, that if you know what is good for you, you jump at the chance to preach in front of nuns and to ask them to pray for you, right? Especially 200 of them. I share all that to make the point that I kind of just made at the end there. It's not just priests, right? It's not just seminarians. It's not just nuns who need Jesus. It's all of us. It is each of us. It is you. These apostles, before they get ordained the first priests, the first bishops of Jesus' church, He calls them to Him. He calls them to Him. He calls them to discipleship, to follow Him. And I love the way that it's put in today's gospel, to come after Him. And to come after Him. And I think in that, in light of that simple reality, there's this invitation to be honest with ourselves, to ask ourselves like these very real questions. Is that what I'm doing? Is that what I have been doing? Am I really after Jesus? Am I pursuing a relationship with Him? Which means, have I heard Him say in some way, follow me, come to me, come after me, open to me? If I haven't heard that, like what would change if we heard Him say that today? If I heard Him say that today? Like for these four men who we read about in today's gospel, encountering Him, hearing Him say to them as individuals and as brothers, come to me, come after me, follow me. That helped them be a part of the beginning of the Lord's church, the Catholic Church, which is His body still on this earth, through which He still cries out, come to me, come after me, follow me, open to me. And when you and I heed that call, when we answer that invitation with a yes, we get to witness the incredible thing that He inaugurated, that He ushered in those early days with those first disciples. It's this restoration. It's this renewal that the Lord desires to work in every single person's heart. He desires to do it first of all in our hearts so that we might work with Him to help Him do that in other people's hearts. This is all tied up into what He's proclaiming in today's gospel. This coming of the kingdom of heaven. So He's doing a lot in this gospel, right, with that simple little phrase. And we heard at the beginning of the gospel that He's making this proclamation in the land of Zebulun and Naphtali, which we probably don't know this, is where the Assyrian exile began 700 years before Jesus. So the Assyrian Empire comes and conquers a large part of the Israelites' territory, the Promised Land. So Zebulun and Naphtali, they were two tribes of the 12 tribes of Israel. They were the first two tribes of the 12 tribes that were exiled from the Promised Land during that time. Eventually, 10 of the 12 tribes would be exiled during that Assyrian exile. 200 years later, the Babylonians, they exiled the remaining two tribes of Israel. And then the first temple gets destroyed. So Jesus goes back to the place where all of this began, where the beginning of the 12 tribes being disbanded, being exiled, where it all begins. And He goes to preach this good news that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. One of the ways that the 12 tribes of Israel would have understood themselves is as a kingdom, like the kingdom of David. So this would have been heard, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Those early Jews, those first century Jews, they would have heard this as a promise. They would have heard this as God's promise to make of King David's line an everlasting kingdom, that this was taking place. In other words, Jesus is making a very bold claim. He's making an incredibly significant claim. In a real way, it's a claim that's aimed at the hearts of those Israelites who were waiting for the moment that God would reveal how He planned to keep that promise that seemed to be totally broken. Every tribe had been scattered. But there were those who held on to hope. We just read about some of them recently. John the Baptist seemed to hold on to that hope. The prophet Simeon was holding on to that hope. The prophetess Anna. Somehow they all were open enough to the Holy Spirit to realize that Jesus had something to do with this restoration. And it would also be aimed at the hearts, what He came to do would be aimed at the hearts of those who had almost given up hope. given up hope that God would be able to keep his promise, that he would be able to bring restoration, renewal, that he would fulfill that prophecy we heard about in today's first reading, that there would be joy in this land of desolation, this land of destruction. And that could have included John the Baptist and Simeon and Anna at some point in their lives. In fact, in prison, John the Baptist, we get to hear a little bit of his heart, a little bit of his questioning. He sends his disciples to ask Jesus plainly, like, are you he who is to come? Or do we look for someone else? And Jesus responds in such beautiful words, again from the prophet Isaiah. Go and tell John what you have seen and heard. The blind recover their sight. The lame walk. The lepers are cleansed. The deaf hear. The dead are raised. The poor have the good news preached to them. And then he ends it with this beautiful, powerful invitation. Blessed is the one who takes no offense at me. The kingdom of heaven, in addition to everything else that it is an invitation to not take offense at him. In other words, it's an invitation to relationship with Jesus, with a person, to the one who can restore what seems beyond repair. That includes our country, that includes your heart, and it includes my heart. He wants to accomplish this work in us so that we can have hearts like him, so that we can love like him, so that more people might hear him calling them to himself. All of it starts with us, with me and you and I, knowing how much he actually loves us, how much he actually loves me. And to receive this beautiful truth that in order for all of this to take place, we need to recognize, we need to come to grips with the fact that we need him. He's not just this side project, right? This, I make time for him when I can. He is the reason I exist. All that I do does not make sense unless it is offered to him so that he can redeem it, so that he can bring about meaning through what I do with my life. And this is not something we have to figure out on our own. That's the beautiful truth connected to the reality that we need him. Ask him. Ask him to open your eyes, to see how he wants you to work with him, to share this good news, to spread his love. So I'll kind of end with this. I talked a big game to that national nun. But I have preached to a much smaller community of nuns a few years ago, about 6 of them to be exact. And I was very, very nervous to do that. Because in my mind, again, they only get the best priests because they're brides of Christ, and of course he would provide for them in that way. You know, all these different thoughts. One unhelpful thought after another. Who am I? And as I was preparing to preach for this much smaller community of nuns, I'm just begging the Lord late the night before to give me something. To give me something that I could share with them. And I couldn't settle on any one thing. My mind was going in a million different directions. But finally, I was able to hear him say what I had no idea that I desired to hear him say, that I needed to hear him say at some point in my life. I heard in my mind, and it greatly touched my heart. You are not the best homily you will ever give. You are not the worst homily you will ever give. You are my son. And there's just something so healing about hearing that beautiful truth spoken to you from God himself, from the one who we are invited to view as our Father. Before anything, you're my child. And so I know I'm not the only one who needs, that the Lord wants to be able to receive that truth. You're not the promotion that you just got. You're not the goal that you just achieved. You're not the sin that you can't forgive yourself for, that you might have committed last night, that you might have committed this morning. first and foremost, you are his daughter or you are his son. And today and every day, he looks at you with great love, and he says to you what he said to those first apostles: come after me. Follow me. Your life, your heart can draw others to me. First thing is first. You come to me.